welcome to another edition of Did You Know Doctor Who, what you may not know about Doctor Who. This time we're going to have a look at the Fourth Doctor's story, which reintroduced the beloved adversary, the Master. I hope you enjoy. Working title for this story was The Dangerous Assassin, but that was considered too lame. The title is generally considered a tautology, which basically means the unnecessary repetition of words, with assassin meaning, by definition, deadly. The redundancy was parodied in the spoof The Curse of the Fatal Death. However, Robert Holmes denied that the title was a tautological, saying that there are plenty of incompetent assassins. This is the first ever story without a companion, and is the only story to do so in the classic era, and this would not be repeated until Water of Mars. The story features an exclusively male cast, except for the female computer voice provided by Helen Blatch. This is the first story set entirely on Gallifrey, as well as the first story whose cast is entirely made up of Time Lords, and is the first televised story in which no human characters appear. This is also the first story to use narration. As I mentioned a while back in my Doctor Who the Movie episode, a lot of elements from this story was the base plate for the movie, such as the opening narration, the Master wanting to restore his life and gain more regenerations, and the use of the Eye of Harmony to accomplish this task. The biplane used in the Matrix sequences in Part 3 is a 1949 Stamp SV-4C. The plane used in filming was used in films such as Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade and The Mummy. Artistic elements introduced in this story, particularly the Time Lord's collars and the seal of Rassilon, would become permanent additions from this story forwards. This story establishes that Time Lords do sometimes use proper names on their homeworld. This story also introduced Rassilon. Part 3's cliffhanger of the Doctor being drowned quickly became infamous for its terrifying nature, which caught the attention of Mary Whitehouse, and because of the intense backlash, Philip Hitchcliffe was replaced as producer for the following season, and the BBC even went as far as to scrap the tape's ending. Luckily it was backed up for future releases, another win for freedom of expression. In fact, the drowning scene was so bad that Tom Baker suffered from aquaphobia. Tom Baker was so worried about the scene, he actually visited a random family to watch Part 3 with them and hear their responses. This serial introduced the fact that a Time Lord has a regeneration cycle of only 12 regenerations for 13 lives, if only that had stayed. At one point, Spandrel has to read aloud a disturbing letter that the Doctor has written for him. In rehearsals, he used a note written in English and thus had not bothered to learn the lines. When it came to the shooting of the scene, David Maloney and the set designer switched it for a note written in Gallifreyan without telling George Pavarada. The second Spandrel opens the note, he goes visibly pale and sweat springs from his forehead, and he stumbles over his words as he struggles to remember them, the appropriate shocked reaction. During the scene where the Doctor is sitting on a chair trying to manipulate Spandrel, who begins explaining why he can't help the Doctor, and the Doctor shoots up from his chair mid-line and looms over Spandrel to intimidate him with his size, he audibly falters and his voice shakes. This was an ad-lib from Tom Baker and George Pravda, who were reacting with surprise to Baker unexpectedly going off the script. At one point it was planned to include a humorous title card at the end of Part 4, reading, "We thank the High Court of the Time Lords and the Keeper of the Record for their help and coordination." However, it was decided that this lampooned the production too much, and it was removed. With the departure of Elizabeth Sladen, Tom Baker told Philip Hitchcliffe that he could hold the show on his own and he didn't need a companion. With this story already in place, Baker was given a story without a companion as a one-off. However, Hitchcliffe deemed that a companion was a necessary feature of the series, and Louise Jameson was introduced as Leela in the next serial. Fans voted this story as the 7th best Doctor Who story during the 40th anniversary. This story was inspired by the Manchurian Candidate from 1962, as well as conspiracy theories about JFK's assassination. The Doctor's line about vaporization without representation mocked a similar American slogan about taxation that was popular during the War of Independence. This is the first appearance of the Master since Frontier in Space. It is unknown if the Master that appears is a decaying version of the Roger Delago Master or another regeneration. The decaying Master look was chosen to show the Master in transitional form, in case future production teams wanted to bring back the character. Initially, the Master would have left the story still decayed, but returned with a fresh new body for the next time he would appear, before it was scrapped. And that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed. The Deadly Assassin is probably one of the best Master stories out there. It is a truly fantastic story and one of the best Tom Baker stories overall. It has that intense factor to it. It has a lot of creative ideas, especially with the whole Matrix sequence when you see this imaginary world which the Master can easily control and manipulate into his own way and basically traumatize the Doctor in several different factors. The Master himself looks fantastic. I love the makeup they've done to the decaying Master, and I love the idea that the Master has used up all of his lives, and there's this idea that there's a lot of history, a lot of story behind this. Like, he obviously used up his lives in several wild adventures, and this is the result. A lot of the lore is expanded upon in this story, which is really good, but it doesn't go too far away. It gives us too much. It just gives us just about enough. Truly a really memorable episode, truly a memorable story. I really recommend you watch it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Did You Know Doctor Who, and I'll see you next time.